Yeah.
I went to Daf Yomi, and one of the days, every time I coughed, he scooted his chair back by the end of class. He was on the other side of the room. I felt so bad.
Hi, all.
Hi, I was on the Daf Yomi site for several minutes.
Oh, I've done
For some
that.
reason. Yes.
Hi, Lois.
Hi, Liz. Hi.
Right, so we'll give it a minute or two just to see if anybody else.
Okay. Tomorrow morning, Rambam is not on or on? Or...
It is.
Oh, it is. Oh, good. Good. Yeah, because an original text was that it wasn't. Okay.
And then I sent a next one saying I apologize, but it is on. And then today during our class, I sent it, but by then who knows where you were, Lois.
Yeah, David was there, and I said, "Are you sure you heard right?"
Oh, okay, good.
Tomorrow.
Right. Oh. Okay, give it one more minute. And we're gonna. Okay, so and hey, Steve, good to see your avatar. A couple of years ago, I wrote a poem which started, "We live in squares, but we dance in circles." That poem was about matzah. But I started thinking about it again because of the fact that when we talk about the year, we talk about it as a cycle, as a kind of circle. And so I just got me wondering about geometric shapes and the Torah, and whether geometric shapes could be a useful way of organizing ideas about life. And so I went back to that notion that we live in squares. And there's a verse in actually more than one place in the Torah where it refers to Arba Kanfos Haaretz, the four corners of the earth, which suggests something like a square. That we tend to think of ourselves occupying squares. Rectangles. Four-sided, with four corners, kind of objects. We even speak sometimes, the Talmud will speak about a person's dalid amot, their four L's, their four amot. An amma is a measure, so it's like a 4x4 space. Sukkah tends to be squared. It could be round, but they tend to be squared, and that's how we talk about them. For the most part, in the Gemara, they assume that a sukkah is going to be a square or rectangle. And just our living spaces in general, that's how we tend to. There are such things as yurts, which are round.
And igloos.
But for the most part, they are round and square. Also, lines. Now, lines, if you look in Tanakh, in the language of Tanakh, for lines, there's something called again, this appears in a couple places, but did I write it down? No. But there's a notion of line that is something you measure with. They would measure with lines. They have like rope, and they'd measure something like that. They also had plumb lines, and sometimes you see a reference to a plumb line in Tanakh. Here I have a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, chapter 31, verse 38, but where it talks about measuring with a line, with a chut, with a string or a line. So you have measuring with a line, but it seemed to me that when we talk about a person's way in the world, we talk of them going down a road or a derech, a path. And so using the benefits of stream of consciousness, I think that is an appropriate place to go at some point. You may want to beef it up with more references to make it clear that this actually is a line, but I think that's typically how we think of it, that there's a kind of path in life where we typically think of that more like a line, a road. You're going down a road. God walks with us. God talks about us going b'derech Hashem, on the way of God, like a road. It's a road, and He walks with us. Sometimes we walk in front of Him. Sometimes we walk on the side of Him. Noah, he walked with God. Abraham walks before God, and he talks about in several places going b'derech Hashem, in the way of God. You think of it as a road, and so I think it would be appropriate to call that a line. So, and then there is the circle. There are different places that make reference to something like a circle. There are, for instance, there's when they talk about something surrounding. You have things that surround other things. You can have nations that are around you or surround you. There are several different circumstances in the Torah where you hear about people, something around, misaviv, saviv. There's also something called, and this is the one which is most useful for us, there's something called a chog or a chug, a circle. This is referenced in the book of Yeshayahu in a couple of places. I wonder if I even still have it here. I was looking at it now. So it says, this is in Yeshayahu, at one point, it says, "It is He who sits upon the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are as grasshoppers." So it's like He's looking down from His vantage point. But they have this word circle, which is in Hebrew chug, a chug. In modern Hebrew, a chug is like a class or a course or like an extracurricular activity, kind of activity. Might be something with a hobby, but it seems here that it means also like a circle. There was in the construction of the Beit HaMikdash, Shlomo made a round pool. There's another place that has something that's described, but the actual word for circle, there doesn't seem to be a specific word for circle that is used, but things that go around in a circuitous way. And chug is one of these things. And it could be connected to the notion of chag. When we speak about chag, we typically translate it as a pilgrimage festival. That's the technical term for the pilgrimage festivals, chag. In Arabic, it's hajj. So going on the hajj is the same word, but it's Arabic, same word as chag. So the chag is pilgrimage festival, but it may be, I think it is related to this notion of chug, which is that the holidays tend to be experienced as part of cycles. And that when we think of the year, we think of it as a cycle. It could be that's also because of the stars, the various astrological symbols that they are changing in a way that describes something like a circle. And famously from The Lion King, we have the notion of the circle of life, that life itself seems to be experienced in something like a circle. Now, there are people who are adverse to the notion of circle, and I've seen and heard Jews over the years make the point that Judaism repudiates the circle of life,
like a pagan thing.
That Judaism repudiates it because in a circle there's nothing new, right? In fact, at the beginning of Koheles, of Ecclesiastes, when he's talking about the world under the sun and the Hevel nature of it, utter futility, says Koheles. Utter futility. All is futile. That's how they translate it. The word is hevel. Hevel means like breath, which means something that is very temporal and of almost no substance. What real value is there for man in all the gains he makes beneath the sun? One generation goes, another comes, but the earth remains the same forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, and glides back to where it rises. Southward blowing, turning northward, ever turning blows the wind. On its rounds, the wind returns. Sovev, that's that word saviv, around. All the streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place from which they flow, the streams flow back again. All such things are wearisome. No man can ever state them. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear enough of hearing. Only that shall happen which has happened. Only that occurs which has occurred. There's nothing new beneath the sun. There could be something where somebody says, hey, look, this is new. It occurred long ago in ages that went by before us. The earlier ones are not remembered, so too those that will occur later will no more be remembered, and those that will occur at the very end. So that is his introduction to his book of Koheles, and it describes an attitude of a circle of life or something, but that there, out of which there is nothing new. And so you'll hear many Jews say that we repudiate this notion, that we don't like this notion of life being a circle, of the year being a circle, of the week being a circle, of the month being a circle. We don't like the circle. And yet the word shana suggests it, because the word shana means to repeat, something that comes and repeats itself. Shana suggests that something that is repeating and repeating and repeating. And that's what we call the year, Shana. And it seems to be the case. The sun seems to come back to the same place. The astrological indicators, the stars in their various astrological shapes, seem to come back every year. The seasons come back every year. We seem to have this cycle repeating itself. And it very much seems like we do accept this notion of a circle. So there, Jason does not accept it. Jason does not accept
the
it.
circle.
All right. So there are those. Rabbi Schiller at Or Sameach, Rabbi Schiller, he should live long and good health. Rabbi Nata Schiller suggested that rather than think of it as a circle, think of it as a spiral.
Ooh.
Bing, 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 bing. So that you are getting both. You're getting the idea that you're coming back to a similar place, but you don't have to be in the same spot each time that you come back.
No, because
so
you're
if you
a
grow,
different age. So as
that's
you
right.
grow.
And also you are growing in character, and
Right.
you're growing in spirit. And so even though you're coming back to a similar place, but you're not necessarily coming back to exactly the same height in that same place, and you're not experiencing it the same. And there are those who suggest that Rav Dessler develops this idea, but there were those before him who discussed this, that in this kind of traveling through time, we stop. There are sort of way stations. There are places that we stop that have particular kind of energy, and this energy is energy that goes all the way back to some first event. So, for instance, the creation of Adam. So there was a particular energy that is there in the universe at the time of the creation of Adam. That energy is there on Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah marks the creation of Adam. And when you get to Sukkot, you are getting to the special Sukkah energy that comes from the fact that God had us living in Sukkot. And when you get to Yom Kippur, you're getting to the energy of Yom Kippur, which may have first been impacted by the fact that the second tablets are brought down on Yom Kippur. And when you go to the Pesach, you're going to the energy from the first Pesach. That energy is there as we travel through time at these little stops along the way. Now, these are all useful ways of thinking about things. You can't get too tied up into these. You can't get too attached to these worldviews. We try on different worldviews and draw from them what is useful, recognizing that none of them is the entirety of what's going on. They are. We are in this model traveling through time, as if time is something you can travel through, and coming back to some place in time, as if there is such a thing as a place in time. And we talk about that in many useful ways, like we are right now, or like Heschel does when he talks about Shabbos, coming back to the energy of Shabbos. And it's very useful, as long as, again, it's just important not to get too attached to any one way of viewing the universe, but you just sort of like milk it of what you can from that perspective and then go, because there's many different facets. The universe, and certainly Torah, has it allows for many different ways of looking at something from different vantage points. And each vantage point has truths and lessons that can be learned from. So this is that. I was wondering something a little bit different. I was wondering if, instead of seeing, if let's say I'm not traveling, let's say I'm sitting here. I'm always here, and I'm sitting here. So how would I experience these times if I'm not a traveler? So if I'm not traveling through time, because in that model, that each one of these times has its own energy, and we're sort of visiting that energy, maybe from a new perspective, but we're visiting that same energy from that time. So that's one model. But I'm saying, let's say in this model, I'm just sitting here. I'm not traveling through time, but time is traveling through me. I don't go anywhere. I'm just here. Okay. So
that way we know where to find you.
Right. And we have that notion of, because when we in the Shema, you talk about different modes of being. One of the modes of being is to walk, when you go on the way. So then you're in motion. But there's another one, when you sit in your house. There's another way, and that is the way of sitting. Sitting is also a way in the world. The word for a study house in Hebrew is yeshiva, sitting. And when you look at the sages of the Talmud, when they are debating and discussing, it often says that they sat and they said, or they sat and they taught, because sitting was the perspective most suited to thought and to discussion of deep ideas. So sitting is also a way in the world. So let's say I'm sitting. So I could be walking in the world, but let's say I'm sitting. So how would I experience the holidays as somebody who is sitting? So let's say I was just sitting in this room, and each day sort of comes to me. Instead of me going to the day, each day is sort of coming to me. I never move. I'm always in the same place. And so today it's Monday in this place. Today it's Tuesday in this place. Today it's Wednesday. It's always today. Like that sign, free beer tomorrow. They have those places that have a sign, free beer tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes when you show up. Guy points to the sign. There's no free beer. Today, it's tomorrow. So you come back the next day. No, look at the sign. Free beer tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. It's only today. So let's say you're living like that. It's always today. So how would you experience the holiday? Because I'll tell you, with the traveling metaphor, you prepare when you're traveling. You pack. Like the traveling metaphor is very useful. Let's say you're pausing for 1 second here. Sorry to do this, but this is time sensitive for my son here. That's ridiculous. Okay. Yeah, before you go on a trip, you prepare, you pack, you think about it. You might think about, you make arrangements. You think about what you're going to do. And that's how we often look at holidays. We think it's appropriate to prepare for them. We pack, we get ready. We then, as we're going through it, we're looking around like you would if you were in some special place that you're not going to be able to stay at. And then you might even take souvenirs on your way out. All of this works really well with the way we tend to celebrate holidays. And you'll hear people talking about the need to prepare. Don't just show up to Rosh Hashanah and expect Rosh Hashanah to be something special. You need to prepare beforehand. And then on Rosh Hashanah, you want to make the most out of it. You're going to be looking around. You're in this special place. You're going to want to take note of those special things like you do when you're traveling. Everything, you're taking mental snapshots and regular snapshots, etc. And then you're getting a few souvenirs and you're taking them with you to help carry along some of the special connection to that place that you had. That works really well, that notion of traveling to it. But what if you're not traveling to the holiday? What if the holiday is coming to you? In other words,
so nice.
Well, it is. You just have to think it, and it does.
Thinking it.
Just live every day in the present. Let's say you live every day in the present. So then, if you do that, then you're not looking towards tomorrow. You're just making the most out of what presents itself today. So now, if you get good at that, then, apparently there are people, I've heard of people like this, that are very good at living in the moment and also living the moment fully. There's, I think it was Shlomo Karabach who said that you should live every moment so fully that all that's left is ashes. You made the most out of everything that was available in that moment. There was nothing left. But you're not looking for tomorrow. You're not thinking about yesterday. You're just focused on today, and you're making the most out of today.
Bridges.
What?
Just burn the bridges.
No bridges are burned. You're just not thinking about it. You're just not, it's not that you're not destroying the past, and you're not, doing away with the future. You're just not thinking about them. You're only thinking about the present. Whatever is right now. By the way, this is a strategy for doing mitzvahs. This has come up in more than one case, but I think this even came up with the Baal HaTanya when he was in jail. He was put there because somebody informed on him to the Russian government, and about teaching something that was in violation of whatever laws there were at the time. And so he was in jail, and the story was that he had an option to do, I don't know all the details, but it was something like he was told, you can do a mitzvah now, or you could do something bigger. I don't know, maybe it was put on tefillin now, or fast on Yom Kippur, something like that, where you had an option to do two things. The one you were offered to do now was relatively minor, and you could have saved it for one later on. But the wisdom is that you should do whatever's coming up, whatever the one that is coming next. That's the one you should do. And you could hear somebody say this as a pragmatic strategy, not just an Eastern way of looking at life, but also as a pragmatic strategy in life, because you don't know the future unless you're a prophet. You don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't benefit you a great deal to think too much about it. Certainly, it doesn't benefit you to live in the future because it doesn't exist yet. So, and also the past, there are maybe a few data points from the past that could be useful for now, but for the most part, living in the past is also living in a place that no longer exists, and it doesn't add to the depth of your experience in the present, which is the only place you can really do anything. So there are many who suggest that you should be more present focused. Be here now, as Ram Dass titled his book. Be here now. So this is where it's happening. This is when it's happening. So take full advantage of the present. And you're not going to be able to do that if your mind is too much on the past and too much on the future. We're not saying don't do it at all, but where is your emphasis? Where is the emphasis? So how would you experience it? So I'm imagining this because it's not how I live my life. I live my life looking at a calendar and thinking of myself as a traveler. But let's say I wondered what it would be like if I was sitting and time was coming through me, or it was moving through my experience, coming into my present, and what would it look like to experience it? And could I fully experience let's say something like the holidays, something like Rosh Hashanah? Because if I'm not, I'll tell you what my problem was. This is where it started. The problem started with circles, because again, I was thinking about circles. So let's say you're in a circle. So Rosh Hashanah, the build up to Rosh Hashanah, where we're looking towards Rosh Hashanah, isn't that wrong? Because you're missing out on the end of the year. If all we're talking about at the end of the year is Rosh Hashanah, then aren't you sacrificing that pragmatic?
All the days, those days.
They're the end of the year. Yeah. And you would think like they would be very important.
Yes.
Especially if I'm trying to make the most out of a year. So if I'm spending my time thinking about Rosh Hashanah and it's the beginning of Elul, then I'm missing out a whole month. I'm not living in the month. I'm not experiencing Elul. I'm living Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is not even here. even though we think of a circle as connecting to the, as an endpoint that connects to a beginning point all throughout the circle, right? But here I'm not fully experiencing the end. The end is something, right? The end is its own special thing. The end of the year. Why aren't I trying to make the most out of Elul as the end of the year instead of trying to use it as a way to prepare for the beginning of the year? Doesn't it seem wrong? The be here now, which sounds so pragmatic, wouldn't that attitude say that you shouldn't be thinking about Rosh Hashanah till Rosh Hashanah comes? Right now it's Elul. Elul has its own energy. Elul is its own thing. So make the most out of Elul. Don't start thinking about Tishrei in Elul.
Anticipation.
Right, but it's that kind of anticipation. You could hear somebody say is not a good thing, because you step over the moment at hand in order to greet a moment in the future. You lose today. You lose today because you're living in the future. The future doesn't exist. Only today exists, and you're living in the future because you think there's going to be benefit, and maybe there will be benefit for it. But what happened to all the days you stepped over before you got to that day? It's something. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if both things in Judaism, maybe be here now isn't exactly what we should be doing. But when you think of Sukkot, I can see where that would be exactly where you want to be. However, do you see what I mean? Just being in that.
So maybe you're saying that there's certain times for sitting. Yeah. There's certain times for sitting, and that's the mitzvah in the sukkah, yeshiva b'sukkah, sitting in the sukkah. So you want to say that for sukkahs, this is the mode that we're supposed to be in, but not necessarily at other parts of the year. Other parts of the year, we're walking, we're moving towards something.
But like then Thursday afternoon and evening, you wouldn't be getting ready for Shabbos every single week.
Right.
I mean, you have to prepare.
Right, but what about Friday? Doesn't Friday have its own special nature? And every time you're going to miss Friday because all you can think about is Shabbos?
Friday.
I'm right. I thought that my thing was that you were missing out on Thursday because you're preparing for Friday and then Shabbos.
Okay, so is that right though?
Right.
So I'm saying we do it, and I think it is right. But the question is, why is it right? In other words, we do it. But isn't there something to be said about this, that you're somehow stepping over Thursday or Friday in order to get to Shabbos? And aren't you missing something? Because if God didn't want there to be Thursday and Friday, he wouldn't have made a Thursday and Friday. He made a Thursday
and Friday to prepare for Shabbos.
Okay, so that would be some people's answer.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Liz.
Fine, you could say that. That some people's, and that does seem to be the way some people understand Thursday and Friday. In fact, Wednesday morning, in the davening on Wednesday morning, we already say at the end of the Yom, which is the Tehillim for the day, we say Lechuna Ranana La Hashem over there. And Moshe Shapiro, blessed memory, says we say that because we start looking towards Shabbos on Wednesday, starting Wednesday, that we have the glow of Shabbos from Tuesday, and we start looking at, we already start looking towards Shabbos on Wednesday. And you could say that this is part of that nature. In other words, if I was spiritually sensitive, I would start to feel the glow of Shabbos that's coming. Now, but I could still see somebody even here insisting on some compromise where I'm still experiencing Wednesday but I'm, as part of my experience of Wednesday, there's a glow from Shabbos. I'm not living Shabbos. Even when they say at tzaddik, every day is like Shabbos, it doesn't, I don't believe it means that all he thinks about is Shabbos the whole time. He doesn't think about Tuesday. It just doesn't make sense that there is a day with all of its Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, blessed is God, each day. You know, every day has its own nature. Every day has its own potential. It doesn't make sense that I'm somehow going to ignore it because there is this splendid, Shabbos, this splendid day that so outshines it, coming up, that I just ignore Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I would assume that what happens is that I'm going to experience Wednesday, but Wednesday always has the glow of Shabbos that's coming. In fact, Monday has the glow of the Shabbos that was past. It would be like experiencing going out or sitting outside in a park in the sun. The purpose of sitting outside is not just the sun. The purpose of sitting outside is the wind. The purpose of sitting outside is the grass and the trees. The purpose of sitting outside are the birds. The purpose of sitting outside are the people that are walking to and fro. The purpose of, there's all sorts of qualities and character to sitting outside, but one of those is the sun. In fact, there's what was the name of that the artist who would paint on PBS? You'd watch him paint.
Right, yeah.
Bob Ross. So they released like all of his shows, and you could watch them So I remember I watched a couple of the first ones like in order. And one of the first points he makes, and I'm sure he does this over and over, what happens is he paints, and you're watching him paint, and he's talking about his process. You could actually go to a paint store and say you want the Bob Ross setup, and you get all the setup, and you could do, what he does. And he's like telling you, do this, and you can hear. But one of the first things he mentions is figure out where your light source is. Where is your light source? There's always some kind of light source. This is going to help with your shadowing and other kinds of things. But this is like one of the first things you have to figure out. Where is your light source? There's always a light source. Now, I'm painting an image of a forest. The light is not the main thing, but it is the first thing to be considering when you're doing this, because it's going to affect your color choices. When you're doing this, and your and also certain perspective, those shadows, which are so important in a painting. And so you could say it is in the sort of the kind of creation of the day, what it is that if I think of myself as an artist, so what is it that I'm working on today? But whenever I'm working on today, I could hear myself say, where is the light source? Where is it coming from? So on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's coming from behind. And on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the light source is coming from the front, right? But again, it's not the only thing that's happening. I'm not living Shabbos. If I happen to see something, I might say to myself, that would be nice for Shabbos, and I'll get that. But Shabbos is not the only thing that's happening. I'm focused on other things. Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, when he was talking about kavanah, he was talking about intent. So he made this distinction. Said, let's say we're talking about intent in prayer. What are you supposed to be thinking about when you pray? So let's say you're in the middle of the Amida, you're in the blessing about that God gives wisdom or knowledge to me. So I'm supposed to be thinking about wisdom and knowledge. I'm also supposed to be thinking that I'm standing before God, right? And there's other details of stuff that I'm supposed to be thinking of in that prayer, the meaning of this word, the meaning of that word, the use of God's name here. What does it mean? There's all sorts of things I'm supposed to be thinking about, but I'm always supposed to be thinking that I'm standing in front of God. Now, the thinking that I'm standing in front of God is not necessarily something that that is always front and center in my mind, but it's always there somewhere. And he compares it to a mother who's working on something in the house. Let's say the mother she's an attorney and she's doing work at home. Meanwhile, her baby, her little toddler is playing in another room, and she's working on something. And then she goes, why haven't I heard them like in the last couple of minutes? And then she goes in and checks and sees what they're up to. And then she goes back to her work. Now, obviously she's focused on her work, but there's always a place where she's listening to in other words, that never totally leaves. That's a kind of consciousness that you can have. In other words, you can have a kind of everyday experience, but you're also always looking for. It's not here. Thinking about Shabbos is not the future. It's my light source. It's the energy source. Where is my light coming from? As I create, I'm drawing on light. Every day has that. Every day has it. It also is true with holidays. There's a special light from holidays. And that is today also. In other words, I'm fully utilizing the last days of Elul. The last days of Elul are not just about Rosh Hashanah. The last days of Elul matter because they are the end of the year, and the end of the year is very powerful. I mean, it's got the benefit of all those other days of the year. I learned a lot, and I've got projects going and all that kind of stuff. This is, there's a lot that's been building towards the work on this day, and today is just that day. It's today, right? But it's not losing perspective by looking back into the past or looking to the future. I'm not living in the past. I'm not living in the future. I'm living in today, but today's light source is coming from yesterday or the day before, or it's coming from a couple of days from now. And that is going to bring the warmth and the light that is going to be very much a part of how I create today. I'm in today. I am living today. I'm fully living today. But those elements are very much a part of the available potential for the day. That is every 25th day of Elul has a certain energy to it, and I use that energy as part of the available energies of today fully. I'm not escaping. And I would say that not only is this possible, but it's very pragmatically useful attitude. That for the most part, that notion of be here now is how it should be. It's very hard to make the most out of what is available if I'm not focused on what is in front of me. For the most part, that is where my focus needs to be, on what's in front of me. But I have tools that when I'm working on what's in front of me, and I have to understand the nature. A great artist understands the nature of the pigments, and understands the nature of the canvas, and understands the nature of the brush, and understands the nature of the weather and everything else that is part of the creative process they're involved in. And so am I. I'm in the present. I'm sitting here, and I'm still using all of these various elements, and it's not a contradiction to that living in the present. Okay, I suggest that we do this again. I'm thinking that next week would be a good time to do it. So I look forward to doing that. I'm very grateful to be able to learn with you guys this evening. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.